So, as I mentioned, it's the second book, but it can be read as a standalone, and it continues. And I haven't talked about her much yet, but it switched to Death, a Venus Bixby mystery. And Venus is a mature yet quirky sleuth, and she lives in a fictional whaling town that I named Chatham Crossing because it's between Providence, which has been in the news, and Cape Cod. So there's a town, for those who may not know, there's a town on the Cape called Chatham. So that's why I said Chatham Crossing, because it's in the middle. And the mayor of the town collapses and dies during the annual Christmas tree lighting. And the detective there asks Venus to get involved in the investigation, but she says no. She owns an oldies music store and cookie bakery, and now she's just opened a kiddie daycare center, so she's really too busy. But then she learns that her cookie bakery may be implicated in the mayor's death.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. It's the author podcast. We get to meet great authors from around the world. And I love when you meet an author that's got many things for you to read and lots of great stories for you to fall in love with, and a great author who loves to share stories. So Valerie's here on the show with us today. I'm excited to have her on the podcast. And we're going to get into the conversation. Valerie, welcome to the show. Nice to have you on Living the Next Chapter.
Well, thank you, Dave. I am so excited to be here. It's been a long time coming. When we booked it, it seemed like far away, and then all of a sudden, here we are.
Here we are.
December. So.
It's great. I love having time with authors. I get to learn so much from you and all of the other guests that have been on the show. The one thing we do have, Valerie, is we have authors who listen to the show. I'd like to talk to them in a second, but first, let's kind of tell everybody where you are in this great big world of ours.
I am in Shelton, Connecticut, which is the upper half of Fairfield County, so still pretty close to New York City or New York.
Very good.
State. Yeah.
Okay.
And
excellent.
Boston. Boston's not too far away.
So you're just in the middle of all of it then. That's good.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
But safely away from all the busyness of life and just kind of a quieter place to live, I would anticipate.
Pardon?
A quieter place to live then, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is quiet. Connecticut is pretty quiet.
Excellent. Well, let's talk to the authors that are listening because they're coming for inspiration from someone who's further down the road than they are as a listener here on the show. And they're just looking for some kind of inspiration, any kind of tips or suggestions you have for a new author that might be listening to the show. What would have been helpful for you to hear early on as an author as you started writing that maybe we can share with somebody today?
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but I'll just share a story. Something happened on Saturday. I was at a senior living center or community doing what they call a sip and shop. So it was mainly for the residents and the employees and their families. And so I had a table there. Most of the tables were crafters who made tables of all things and hair twirly things and jewelry. Yeah. And there I was with my books. And so I had, really wonderful conversations with all those different audiences that I mentioned. But one family member, I would imagine, started a conversation with me by saying that she had started to write her book and was about 30 pages into it, had given it to friends and family who were encouraging her to continue and write her story, but she was stuck and she didn't know what to do. So I thought about it briefly, and what I recommended to her was that she read her story and then write it from a different character's point of view. So, she obviously had, one main character. And I said, now take a different character and tell the story as if that character was, because it would give her a whole different perspective. And I think that I have done that. Most of my books are multiple point of view. Although the last one that I'm working on seems to be one point of view, so I'm negating everything that I said. But I found that I was, especially when I was writing my very first novel, that it was very refreshing when I was doing a scene from a different point of view.
Right.
And so that is something that I would recommend to aspiring authors, that, if you're getting bogged down, uh, you don't have to do the whole book from a different point of view, but take a chapter anyway and just write the scene from somebody else's point of view. And it might, triggers some very fresh way of thinking.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I like that. That's a great point of view.
Yes. Another thing that I would say is that when you're starting out, you might think, as I did, I'm going to write one book because, I, even growing up, I always believed that each of us has a book inside. We just have to get it out. And it took me
Yeah.
decades to get there. But what I found, and what I would say to aspiring authors, is that if you think you're going to write just one book, beware. You're going to probably write more than one book because it's addicting. Once you've written the end for that first book, suddenly you say, I can do this.
Yeah.
And so then when you put it out to the world, and you start seeing people read it and getting reviews, and, hopefully you're getting some good traction with it, you feel it's a high. Okay, so it is addicting. And but I can also say that that success, in especially your first book, it's fleeting. Okay, it lasts just a few months, because then there's so many authors out there today that there's a lot of competition, which I think is why people write a second book and a third book. Now, some people, it was recommended to me when I wrote my very first book, to write a series. And so I did. So my first series is what I call the What's Not series. So this is the first book. It's What's Not
Mhm.
Said.
Yeah.
And then I wrote What's Not True, and then What's Not Lost. And
Right.
even though they're standalone books, there is, a central character and themes throughout. And and similarly with my Cozy Mist, so that's a romantic comedy series. Similarly, on the Cozy series that I'm in the middle of writing, there's, a main character, and she goes through the whole series. But I would say that I have seen my author friends, some of them have written series, but a lot of them haven't. I mean, they've written multiple books, but each book is totally different. I mean, some of them
Right.
are historical fiction, and then they'll write a mystery, So do what's right and what feels right for you. I don't think that there's any, kind of cookie cutter answer to that. It has to be what works for
Yeah.
you. And then I would say that it no matter how old you are or how young you are. In fact, at the event the other day, a woman came to my table with her son, who was probably 8 years old, and he was really interested in writing a book. And so I talked to them about how that can happen, and how it's so easy today to even take like a short book and go to Staples, which is an office supply
Yeah.
firm or store here in the States, and to get it published. And so it's never too early to start, and it's never too late to start,
Yeah.
because I think we have to believe that our life experience is what our superpower is. And
Right.
I would encourage writing at any age.
What happens for you as a writer in the process of writing? How do you change personally? You're gaining new skills and new abilities. You're finding your voice as a writer. What changed for you in the process of writing your books?
I became more interested in other people, which may be a funny thing because I'm
Yeah.
pretty much an introvert. And
Yeah.
so I, kind of forced myself because I retired from corporate America back in 2016, I guess. But it kind of forced me like out into the community, to go sit, at Panera or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, and at the libraries and even TV. Okay, so whether it be a movie that I'm watching or the news, or a series, to watch how people move with their bodies or how
Mm.
the words that come out of their mouth, the eye and facial expressions. So I became more observant of people and life, and even when you go for a walk and you hear the birds or the cars or even the silence that we had during the lockdown in
Right.
2020, 21, so all of those I think became a part of me and my writing because it enabled me to see outside of myself.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't anticipate will happen in the process of writing. They have a story to tell. They're there to write the story. But along the way, you change. You become a different person than you were when you first started. So there's
I
a lot of
also
growth opportunities, right?
I also not that I wasn't before, but I am awestruck by writers. I mean, what they and I read all kinds of different genres, but I'll read something and I'll put it down and I'll say, how did they ever write this historical fiction? Because obviously it's historical, but it's also fiction, right? And so I just so admire all kinds of authors, no matter what they write.
Right.
I
Yeah.
respect, total respect.
And now you're part of that community. You're part of that group
I
of
know.
authors that other people respect, which is interesting, right?
It is because again, I go back to that event just the other day,
Right.
and people, they, I have 5 books published, and I have them out on the table, and they come up and they say, I have a name tag on, and then they look at the book and they say, "You're Valerie Taylor." Well, I'm Valerie Taylor,
Yeah.
so it's it's a weird feeling. I'm not sure that I was ever. Well, I did well in corporate America, but I don't think I was admired, perhaps as maybe a few people might admire me today. So,
I think the lesson too for authors listening is to, when you are published, to get out there in front of people like you did, go to these events and set up a table. What a great way to have conversation with people, meet people that aren't maybe expecting an author to be set up there. There's other people who make handmade crafts and candles and things. And then all of a sudden there's an author with a table. It's like, how engaging
yeah,
for a reader to be like, I get to talk to an actual author. I know when I was a child, like in school, we had an author come to class. Now, this was a long time ago. And I remember sitting on the floor cross-legged, looking up at this author going, that's a real author in front of us.
right.
Like, and it was a meaningful interaction that stuck with me my whole life.
Yeah, yeah,
So you don't really know the impact you're going to have on people, but
right.
being out there in the public and doing events like you're doing, it's a great idea.
I go to, well, in Connecticut, there's a couple of groups that do an awesome job in organizing events for authors. And so I call them book fairs, right?
Yeah.
And Some of them are outside, some of them are inside. I prefer inside, but I've done both. And though many of those events are very large, there could be 30 authors, 50 authors, 100 authors. And I generally do well at those, but it's very competitive, and I feel that competition when I'm there. And I think, and sometimes you'll talk to somebody for 10 minutes and they're really engaged, and then they move away from your table and go talk to somebody else, and they'll say, "Oh, I'll be back." And sometimes they come back, and sometimes they don't, which is fine. But
Yeah.
I also go to these craft fairs, which, as you
Yeah.
just described,
Right.
I might be the only author there, and I do
Smart.
really well at those, so
Yeah.
that's my preference, so
Yeah. And I would, I resonate with the feeling of being an introvert. That's what I am. Big events. I'm not really a huge fan of big events and all the attention on me. So I like having smaller things like that where, again, you're not competing with a lot of voices. It can get noisy in a room with a lot of people talking. It's nice when people just come up to your table and can have a great interaction with you. So
exactly.
yeah, smart. That's really good. I like that. Okay, first of all, I want to say I love the covers of all three of the series for What's Not. Like just the colors and the pictures and how the book covers are laid out. As an author, is that something that you have the ability to speak to, or is that something that if someone directs you that we're going to go this way? Like, what kind of say do you have over your cover?
So, as I mentioned, there's two different series. So the What's
Yeah,
Not series that I held up the rom-com. The
yeah,
first two of these books I published through She Writes Press, which is a,
okay,
a hybrid publisher. And so they have a whole process where you fill out what they call a cover memo,
yeah,
and you give them all kinds of information, and then they come back with two or three different covers, and then you go back and forth. And so the first one had keys, the second one has wedding rings, and the third one
yeah,
has a rose and a coin, a Greek
yeah,
coin. Okay. So
hmm,
each of those symbols has something in the story. And so I was really able to direct them on that
yeah,
pretty well. And so I was happy with that. And then the What's Not Lost, the green one with the rose, I self-published that. And
oh,
but She Writes did the cover for me.
nice,
And so we were able to keep the theme going. And then in the cozy, starting with A Whale of a Murder,
yeah,
and I think we're going to talk about these, and Switched at
yeah,
Death, right?
yeah,
So
right,
I hired a cover designer, and again, I did kind of like a cover memo for her with a lot of information, and she really did exactly what I wanted. I mean, that this was the first one,
it's
and
beautiful,
we really, she gave me you know, when she designed the font of the heading, it was kind of bland. And so I
yeah,
said, I want something different. And so she did this. I don't know the name of the font, but she
yeah,
was so excited because it was a font that she wanted to use, but hadn't been able to get an author to accept it. But then the
nice,
key too is that I have this
yeah,
signpost that says music, museum, and mayhem. And that, kind of is what the is embodied in the story. And then it Switched at Death, which is, so that one is more of a summer story. And
yeah,
this is more of a holiday story. And so the signpost says cats, cookies, and chaos. So
hmm,
the alliteration of the C's
yeah,
and the M and the other one. But then she put, of course, she designed the whole thing, but she put, like snowflakes in the back. And she plopped this red Santa hat on the top, which really made me laugh because even though it takes place now, I hadn't mentioned a Santa hat. But when I saw that, my draft was like almost finished, ready to
yeah,
hand off to her to lay out. But I went in and I actually added just a sentence in one of the scenes
Wow.
where
Really?
I added I think somebody walks in with a Santa hat on or something like that.
Huh.
So that was like one thing was driving the other, which
Wow.
very cool. A real partnership, which which you can have with designers.
That's amazing how a design element helped add to the story. I think that's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
Usually everything seems, from my perspective as a reader, I would think that the book is done, everything's finished, and then they start the artwork. But I love that there was this back and forth. It's
Yeah,
great.
it was great. Yeah, she's a great designer. So, and now that
Excellent.
I'm working on the third one, I've already started kind of noodling. What are those three words going to be
Yeah.
on the signpost? And the next one takes place in March, and so there's a St. Patrick's Day theme to it.
Okay.
So I'm curious because the first two books are obviously, blue, how she's going to, we're going to want to keep the blue, but how are we going to incorporate more green in,
Right.
into it? So it'll be interesting. So that's the project to finish for 2026. So,
So there's a chance to have you back on in the future to celebrate that book
oh,
when
that
that's
would be
ready
great.
too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I like that. Who do you think is your, for each of the two series, who do you think is your ideal reader? Who are you trying to reach? Because I want to make sure that we're talking to them today.
Yeah. So I would say for the rom-com, it's a contemporary story. It actually takes place in like 2019, 2020. And I say it's a mature audience.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's you know, over 25,
Yeah.
mostly women. However, I can tell you that I have um, a fellow in China who's a fan of who I got to know because I had done an event, a podcast, if you will, with the New York, I think it was the New York Public Library, and he was on the call from China, and so then he's been following me. Yes, so and other men
Wow.
have read the books, the rom-coms, and enjoyed them. Yes, I have another fan in Nebraska, of all places. So now the cozy, on the other hand, I've sold it to teenagers. Um, and so I don't know if people know, but cozies. So this is kind of the difference between the two genres. So the
Okay.
rom-com you have more leeway, and you can go more than PG, or
Yeah.
it's
Right.
not quite R rated, but
Yeah.
it's not 50 Shades of Gray, but it's
No.
definitely mature. Okay.
Yeah.
But on a cozy, it's got to be what they call clean. Okay.
Okay.
There can be romance, and there's romance in all of my books. And there's mystery in all of my books. And with romance and crime kind of go together.
Yeah.
I think Hercule Poirot and
Hmm.
Agatha Christie said something like that.
Yeah.
But they say you can take the romance up to the bedroom door,
Hmm.
and but then you cannot go over it. So,
Yeah.
um, the cozies are, readable by anybody, really.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Because I know you mentioned on your website, welcome to the librarian. So if there's maybe a high school librarian or
Right.
college librarian, definitely these books can find their way onto the shelves. So
I talk about events a lot. I was at an outdoor event upstate Connecticut in the fall, and a gal or a family came up, and I think it was a teenager, recognized my books, my rom-com, and she said, "Oh, those books are in our library." And I was like, "Really? Okay." I'm not going to argue with it, but I was a little surprised.
wow.
But
Interesting.
yeah,
There you go. Okay. That's great. So yeah, so you definitely know who you're writing for. You're getting great feedback from your audience in person and through reviews and everything, which is excellent. I'm reading through on your website, a lot of great comments and things about your books. Where do you see you kind of going after finishing off your next series? Are you going to continue writing? Are you going to go in a new direction? Do you kind of have a long-term goal for 2026?
Yeah, I do. And I've started kind of doing some research on this, and I'm afraid that it's just going to take me away from finishing
Yeah,
this third
right.
book. So I have to be really careful. Um, two different directions, or maybe it's three. I'll have to think about this. So one is that I'm thinking I'm done writing long novels. I'm just going to do blogs. Substack has become really popular, and
Yeah,
I'm on there, and I enjoy. It's very easy, which I like. So that's one area. Another is I really, and I think I mentioned it earlier. I love and admire authors of historical fiction,
yeah,
and I have a little thing in the back of my mind area that I might want to work on, but I mean, it's a real project. It takes years to
right.
write
Yeah,
historical fiction. And
right.
then third avenue that I've been exploring a little bit, and I'm probably going to have to take a course. I think I want to write a screenplay. So either taking like my first book, What's Not Said, and turning it into a screenplay, or something brand new. And and the reason that that's an itch for me is that people have said that they love my dialogue, and that one review, I think for What's Not Said, had said that it was a chef's kiss. And I mean, that was like the greatest compliment. And I know I enjoy writing dialogue. And of
Yeah,
course, screenplay is like probably 80% dialogue and
right.
20% direction.
Yeah,
So I might put the historical fiction aside and do the blog and the screenplay.
nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. We've had several authors who have done exactly what you're saying on the
Oh,
show
really?
and written screenplays. And yeah, if you're ever interested in talking to somebody, just from author to author, I've got some great contacts
Oh,
for you, past
great.
guests on the show that could give you some great direction.
Oh, I'd
So
love that. Thank you.
yeah, I think that's a very interesting to follow an author's path from writing into screenplay because again, it is a very different way of writing.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're more focused on the characters and what they're saying than the backdrop and everything else. There just needs to be enough story to give direction
Yeah.
for have the visual side of it. But you really got to go in after the conversation and the story between
Right.
the characters. Yeah, I like that.
And
Interesting.
what I've read over the last couple of weeks as I'm researching it is that you're not really even telling the whole story. You're
Mm,
just, pulling back or going in, I guess, and just, you know, and it's recommended that I get like if I'm going to do my own book, then, get the screenplay of a romantic comedy and then watch it and read it at the same time.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. That's one of the things I heard one of my guests say is they'll grab the script for a movie and put the movie on and watch the movie and reference the script at the same time. That's super smart.
Yeah.
'Cause then you get to see how it translated from words on a paper to your screen.
Right.
So that's a good lesson. Yeah, that's interesting that you brought that up. That was
Yeah.
talked about on this show. That's interesting. Good. Wow, that sounds like a lot to take on for a first time screenwriter to do that. But I'm sure that with the amount of words that you've already put pen to paper on, you've already got a foundation to build from. So that's interesting.
So I think what drives me is the challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for years, as I said, from childhood, I was like, I can write a book. I can write a book. And then I read a book, and I won't name the author of the book, but it was like a romantic comedy, and I took after I was finished with the book, I took the book and I literally threw it across the bed. I was reading it in bed, and I was like, I can do this. I can do this.
Mm,
So I took it on as a challenge, but it took me a long time to get all the corporate speak out of my head and be able to find my own voice. But then, I think that I've done it now. With this next one, it'll be 6 books. I was only supposed to write one. You know? And so it's kind of like, well, now I need a new challenge. What
mm,
I don't write poetry. I mean, that's another, I admire poets. I mean, how cool is that?
right.
But, I could never understand poetry in school. And so I don't think that I could write it.
That's a completely different muscle to develop over time, I would think, right? So, no, that's amazing. I like it. So for your most recent book that's available to readers now,
Yeah.
what would you say as it's gift giving time at the time of recording? People are looking for ideas for their loved ones this holiday season. So let's talk a little bit about this one because again, it's already got Santa's hat on the cover. So come on, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the story for that one, as people are considering that possibly for a purchase this Christmas season.
So, as I mentioned, it's the second book, but it can be read as a standalone, and it
Yeah.
and it continues. And I haven't talked about her much yet, but it's Switched at Death, a Venus Bixby mystery.
Mm.
And Venus is a mature yet quirky sleuth, and she lives in a fictional whaling town that I named Chatham Crossing because it's between Providence, which has been in the news, and Cape Cod. So there's a
Hmm.
town, for those who may not know, there's a town on the Cape called Chatham. So that's why I said Chatham Crossing because it's in the middle.
Okay.
And the mayor of the town collapses and dies during the annual Christmas tree lighting. And the detective there asks Venus to get involved in the investigation, but she says no. She owns an oldies music store and cookie bakery, and now she's just opened a kiddie daycare center, so she's really too busy. But then she learns that her cookie bakery may be implicated in the mayor's death. So she has no choice but to get involved. And soon as she's uncovering clues, she discovers that maybe someone she cares about is also may also be involved in the mayor's death.
Mm.
So, will she be able to solve the mystery and bring joy and cheer back to Chatham Crossing by Christmas? We shall see.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then for people that are coming to the What's Not series, should we start with the first in the series as a starting point? Do you think that'd be a good place to send people?
Yeah. What's not said is, as I said, it's for a mature
Yeah.
audience, and it's about a different protagonist, Cassie O'Callahan, who's been in her dysfunctional marriage way past its expiration date. And just as she's about to run off with a young man she met on a solo vacation to Venice, she discovers her husband has a serious illness. So will she stay in the marriage or will she run off with the hot young dude? And
Mm.
there's major twists and turns in the story. And what I did with that series, unintentional as I was writing it, in the third book, The What's Not Lost, there's a secondary, very minor character in it named Venus Bixby.
Oh. Okay.
And I loved writing Venus and creating her for that story. And so when I decided to write a cozy mystery, I said Venus needs her own series. So that's
Mm.
how Venus became the protagonist in and
Interesting.
yeah, so that was very interesting. So what I had to do, because the rom-com is in the later 2019, 2020,
Yeah.
and so I had to back up the timeline for the cozy. So the cozy starts in 2010, and
Okay.
so it's before.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had a little planning that I had to do on that, but it was a lot of fun doing it. So again, it goes back to my innate desire to have this challenge, because that was a challenge. It was like, okay, am I going to be able to make this work? And even with the rom-com, the first book is set in Boston and Venice, the second is Boston and Paris, and the third is Boston, Paris, and Greece. And the question that I get all the time from people is, have you been there?
Mm.
These places. And yes, I lived in Boston for a while, but I also was in Venice and Paris and Greece. And so the Venice one, it was at the publisher, as she writes, they were laying out the interior, and I was going to Venice. It was 2019, right? Like 6 months before the lockdown. And so there's a major chapter in Venice, so I took it with me and I walked it through to make sure that I did it right.
Wow.
And then the Paris one, what's not true, was during the lockdown. I was writing that, and
Mm.
the internet is a wonderful thing, because
Right.
I have a major scene at the Eiffel Tower, and I was able to really kind of get some information about the Eiffel Tower to make sure. I think I'm talking about how there's a restaurant there and how high it's off the ground, whatever. And I
Yeah.
had people say to me, you nailed Paris.
Wow.
And I had been there years before with my daughter. And then in What's Not Lost, I had been to Santorini and Catacalon, where there are scenes in both those places. And the winery at Catacalon, I had some questions that I needed verification of. And so I emailed the folks at the winery and told them what I was doing. And they immediately emailed me back. It was a lot of fun. So, and then I had
Oh,
Venus born out of that book.
yeah.
So, yeah.
The interesting thing that I'm pulling together too, talking with you, is that you mentioned early in our conversation for an author that's stuck to write from a different perspective, a different character perspective.
Oh,
So in What's Not Lost, we're introduced to Venus, which turns into that character becoming her own series, just from a different character's point of view within the story, open the door for a completely new series of
right,
books,
right.
right? So you are living the advice you're giving to an author about getting
True.
stuck and
Right.
thinking of another point of view, right?
And what I've thought about, as Venus, really kind of grew and grew and grew with the cozies as they're rolling out, is, had I known that I was going to do that with Venus, would I have done anything different in What's Not Lost with her character? And I'm not sure. But, a reader just recently, when I had asked me again the question you did about what's next, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of was talking through that, and she actually gave me another thought that I haven't built upon at all yet. But she recommended that I write, like mini short stories, mini stories about where Venus is solving crimes. So they could be 20 pages or 50 pages, or, that I could easily just publish online, without much problem. So, I
Wow.
mean, it's a thought. And
Yeah.
and actually, I was doing some writing the other day and a scene, and I found with that, in the crevice of my mind, the scene that I was writing, I realized what I was doing in the scene was almost setting up the ability to write another story.
Mm.
And if it was, that she was going to solve, she was contemplating some issue in town, that wasn't going to be solved in the book. And I thought, oh, you're doing it, Valerie. You're
You're
doing
doing it again. Yeah, that's great. I know that some of the authors I've talked to on the show, they leverage Substack and they write short stories for a paid audience on Substack. So
Right.
people actually pay for those short stories to be delivered to them.
Yeah.
And it keeps them writing. When
Yeah.
they're working on new projects, they're still actively, as an author, they're still writing stories. They're just shorter and they're just for a very small audience, but immediately earn income from that as well.
I think most authors would say that they enjoy the act of writing more than publishing and marketing,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But the publishing aspect of it, because I was a marketer all my life, almost all my life, my corporate life, marketing communications. So that, I was really intrigued with what it took to create and publish a book, because I've been doing brochures all my life, so to do a book was really interesting. And I've had, luckily, I have had great experiences with the publishing process.
Good.
On the marketing, I would say, you would think that I'd be a pro at that as well. But, they so much about marketing books has changed, since I published What's Not Said in 2020. I mean, they keep moving the goalposts on us and,
Right.
and
Right.
changing things. So, yeah, in a way that's good because it keeps me anyway fresh and it keeps me young. So
Right.
I can keep learning. That's one of my mantras is that I like to feel like I learn something new every day. And so writing and publishing does that truly.
Excellent. And you're truly living your next chapter, which is the name of my podcast. So, yeah, you're truly doing that all the time. I love it. Okay, great. Let's talk about your website, Valerie, before we head towards the door. Tell us a little bit more about the site. I'm on here. I'm looking at it. I see all about your media, your blog, what you're reading. So you have a list of books that you're reading as well. And we can see the series and all the information is there for us to click and purchase and buy. But anything in particular that you like to point new visitors of your website to?
Well, I'm not even sure if it's on there or not, but I will I have maybe I have posted my prior year's reading. So, I read about 40 books a year, and so I know I think that's a lot. It's not for some people, but I'll post my list in January that I read. So I should also mention that each of my books has a playlist in it. And if I don't have it on my website, I should put them on there. Yeah, so there's music within a thread throughout each book. And then
Wow.
the cozy mysteries, each book has about a dozen cookie recipes. So this is what I consider value added, and I haven't posted them, I don't think, on the website, so I should do that.
Okay.
But the website is like the least thing that I pay attention to, honestly. So but that you talk about aspiring authors. I mean, so that's all part of the package that you learn. It's not just writing the book. There's all kinds of things that go, there's Facebook and there's Instagram and there are people on TikTok, and I haven't gone that way. So you're going to inspire me to update my website. It's a good
That's
thing.
great. Good. And all your social links are right there on your website as well. So we
Yes,
can follow you
yes,
in
they
all the
haven't
places, which is
changed.
great.
And they can subscribe to my Substack. There's a subscribe button, I think.
Yeah.
So that's all. And I always say I don't spam people. With Substack, I think I'm starting to do a little bit more than I did before I moved to Substack. And what I've done with my newsletter, I think, is a little different. Some authors, and it's their choice. Focus their newsletters just entirely on their books and where they're going to be, and blah 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 blah. For me, what I'm trying to do with most of my newsletters is to feature a country. I call my newsletter Behind and Ahead. So I want to look kind of behind at a country. I did Ukraine when Ukraine was invaded, and I do some quick research about what bookstores in these countries and prominent authors, and I give links to authors and books from various countries, and then I'll write something quirky about myself, so then people wouldn't necessarily know, and then I'll do something where I am in my writing journey. So that's the ahead, what's going ahead, and I'll often with sometimes I do blurbs for other authors for their books, or I'm just promoting them. I'll promote other author books on my newsletter as well. So
good, excellent. Well, while we're talking, I've already signed up, so I'm part of your Substack family. So there we go. So I'm there, and I'd encourage everyone else to do
the
that.
Most technologically advanced person I know.
I do have some challenges. I got to tell you, there's some things that make me go, I don't understand. But yeah, no, I do enjoy.
You are
technology.
amazing. Yeah.
I love connecting with great people like you. That's what makes me happy. So
You're fun.
Yeah,
You're
excellent, great. So come back in the new
Okay.
year when everything
you.
is done and ready for the next in the series.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you back as a guest and reconnect. That would be a lot of fun.
Dave, you are super, super. Now, who interviews you?
Not very many people want to talk to me as a guest, which is, I love guesting. It's fun, but I just love podcasting, and I love meeting great people. So, and having you on the show is a win for us here on the show. So thank you for making time for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. And if we don't see you online, we might see you at a craft sale.
Yes.
And I'm encouraging everyone to go hang around the table and not just talk, but buy books in front of the author. Make sure you get a signed book as well. Get an autograph. I think that's great to do. That's a great idea.
I agree. Well, thank you.
Excellent. Everyone, thank you. Thank you. Everyone, all information for Valerie in the show notes. As always, go and sign up for her Substack and make sure you tell others about all of the amazing books. The 6th one is coming, but 2 series of books for you to fall in love with. And again, it's so great to have you on the show, Valerie. Thank you for making time for us.
Love being here. Thank you, Dave.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee. Okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.